Welcome back, guys, or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous, and that's the 2025 Ford Bronco Sport. But more specifically, this is the Big Bend, so this is about the cheapest Bronco Sport that you can currently buy, and it's in one of Ford's best paint colors, named Oxford White, which even on a sunny or shady day like today, this thing looks absolutely fantastic. But while this is one of the most aggressive and coolest looking compact crossovers currently on the market today, it's not perfect, so today I get to share the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Bronco Sport to help you guys at home decide if this might be the right vehicle for you, or if you should leave it at the lot and look at the other competitive competition. So today you get to see a walk around, all the specs, initial driving impressions, 0 to 60 on GPS, and then my final thoughts on huge thanks to Goody Motor Ford for letting me borrow this one for the day. I'll link them below if you're interested because they sell below MSRP, they ship all over the country, and with that said, let's dive right into this review. And thank you so much for watching car videos on YouTube today, but if you get anything out of this video, you like my style, or you appreciate the Bronco Sport, please be so kind to consider liking my video. Basically, that lets me know to make more stuff like this, it helps my video get shared, and it'll help you as well by having the YouTube juice show you more stuff like this. Thank you so much. But if you're new to Ford, or the Ford Bronco Sport, there's a few interesting things that you should probably know. Ford is still an all-American owned and operated automobile company. Although they sell a lot of their vehicles globally, even including vehicles like the Bronco Sport and other markets. They were founded in Detroit, Michigan by Henry Ford in the year 1903, so they've been around for quite a while. But the Bronco Sport, it really hasn't. This is still part of the first generation that came out in 2021, and although the colors, the trim levels, some of the options and upgrades have changed over the last 5 model years, this is still the really popular Ford Bronco Sport that they unveiled just a few years ago. The Bronco Sport is a compact crossover, so it does compete against things like the Honda CR-V, the Toyota RAV4, the Mazda CX-5, but you might be thinking this vehicle looks nothing like those vehicles. Well, the dimensions are pretty similar, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, but the platform that this is, it's part of the C2 platform, similar to the Ford Maverick mini truck, similar or more similar to the Ford Escape. This just has a different body on it, although it is still a unibody vehicle, and that's why it's often nicknamed the Baby Bronco, because this is not the more off-road capable, off-road focused, body-on-frame vehicle that the full-on Bronco is. It's still a very popular vehicle, especially if you don't do more than just soft-roading. If you're not going to do extreme off-roading, you don't really need a full-size Bronco. You might be more interested in something like this. And these really are pretty popular because well over 100,000 units sell every single year right now in the United States market. But unfortunately, these are part of the C2 platform, which means it is assembled in Mexico before it's shipped over to the border. And this is the cheapest trim level you can get, so for about $31,000 after destination and delivery, what do you get? You get a 5-star crash-test rated vehicle, which is pretty awesome that even though this is the base model, it still has the structural integrity to help protect you and your family and deliver pretty decent crash test results, especially for being a smaller compact crossover where some of the other ones are over a half foot longer than this. It even has some pretty good safety tech like blind spot monitoring and adaptive cruise control, and a few other features that you'll see throughout this video. But it has a few other cool features that for $30,000 you really can't complain too much about. It has really bright LED headlights. It has these nice 17-inch wheels, which I would not even go aftermarket. Those look so good. You have black roof rails, black side mirror caps, black bumpers, and a moderate amount of cladding. Only enough to do a little bit of soft-roading, but not enough to be obnoxious. I really like the overall profile of this vehicle. Heck, you can even open up the glass in the upper back portion of the hatch, which is pretty darn cool. But if you do want to spend a little bit more money, you obviously can. There are 5 total trim levels, topping out with about a $40,000 price premium for the most loaded one before any extra options and delivery. So you can have one of these from anywhere from about $30,000 to about $44,000 fully spec'd. And these are really easy to park, drive around town, and just enjoy even at highway and interstate speeds. They're pretty stable on the road, which is kind of surprising because these are one of the smallest compact crossovers you can buy. They're only 14.3 feet long, or almost a foot shorter than the longest class leading length compact crossovers, but it has an 8.75 foot wheelbase and a really good approach angle, so that really helps for stability. Additionally, this is wider and taller than all the other compact crossovers. It's almost 6.2 feet wide, about 5.8 feet tall, so it has a really nice and aggressive stance. And then it does weigh about 3,500 to 3,700 pounds. It really just depends on what the powertrain is. Is it the 1.5 liter turbo like this, or is it a more loaded 2-liter turbo? And then these are rated to tow between 22 and 2,700 pounds if it has a tow package or a tow hitch. This one being a 1.5 liter is going to be on the lower end, as well as the ground clearance. This only has 7.8 inches of ground clearance. a 380 final drive ratio, but it can do a pretty nimble full circle in about 37 or 38 feet. And then the last couple things to mention on here is the gas door is located on the driver's side, which I really prefer. It just makes it convenient to hop out of the driver's seat and to fill up. But unfortunately, when you lock the vehicle, the gas door doesn't lock, so the bums might attempt to siphon some of your 16 gallons of 87 or higher octane fuel. This is also not class leading in MPG, even with the smaller engine. It's only rated for 25 city, 30 on the highway, so your max road trip and conservative range is going to be about 480 miles, which in that case is actually pretty decent because this is a larger than average compact crossover gas tank size. And then the wheels. There's something I like, there's something I dislike. I love the tire size. It is a 225 65 17, but this Continental Pro Contact tire only has 8/32 to tread, so it has 1 to 2 30-seconds less than most of the other OEM tires that I test. And because this is the base model, the key fob only has unlock, lock, and panic button, and then the only option that this vehicle has on it is actually the key code. Right here, it's about a $225 option. It's a must-have in my opinion. That is pretty cool that Ford is still putting those on the exterior of some of their vehicles. The driver's side door panel of this Bronco opens up fairly large. It's not class leading in how wide it opens, but it's still easy to get into here. This base model has basically just the cheaper black materials. They're going to age well. They are soft. The armrest is very thin. I wish that was a little bit wider, but you have everything that you need and nothing that you don't. You can also see where a higher end speaker system would be probably listed on this base model, but they didn't even redesign the basic speaker. They just don't have the little emblem in there for whatever brand this would be. And then you have a bottle and snack pocket. You also have Bronco on the door sill. It is plastic, but it's really cool that that is there, although it does easily get dirty and scratched up. You have a cloth all-weather mat. You can release the hood by pulling that twice. You have rubberized dead pedal. You have regular gas pedals. I don't see a knee airbag on this, unfortunately. Maybe it's there, but it's not advertised, so it's probably not. And then you have your lighting options right here. Power liftgate is not included on this trim level, but you can still unlock it from here. You have ventilation. You have the turn signal and high beam lighting stock right there. You have the tilt and telescoping feature for the wheel. It is manual. And because it's hot outside today, it's like 90 degrees, everything feels sticky, but especially the steering wheel. I don't think it's necessarily the polymer synthetic materials on the steering wheel. It's just because everything is hot, everything feels sticky right now. And then you have a really nice, really comfortable, but very low bolstered cloth seat. I actually like it quite a lot. And then you have an LED light up top. Sitting inside the baby Bronco is actually a really nice place to be. The belt line is pretty average for a compact crossover. Because of the more aggressive flat hood, you can't see out as close to the vehicle as you can by some other compact crossovers. Maybe by only 3 or 4 feet, but it still makes a difference if there's something close to the vehicle that you don't want to run over. And overall, this is just a really cool layout. It feels very special, but also feels very forward with the modern design language of their styling and engineering. When you fire it up, you even have the Bronco on the digital instrument panel, and then digital displays. It does have Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, the horn. It sounds pretty good because it's now cool in here. The AC is turned on. There was a fly on the window just a second ago that I was trying to get in, but we're not going to let it. I don't necessarily like that all the HVAC, HCon, aircon controls are controlled through the screen. I wish they were physical. I wish instead of having this touch screen right here at the bottom, I wish they just had, that right there. Something different. The vents do blow pretty cold air though, although this vehicle is thoroughly warmed up. I've been with it for a couple hours now. And then you have some plugins. You have what would probably be a wireless charger on a higher end trim level. Otherwise, this one is sloped down and is very grippy, both sides of it. And then you have the backup camera. Clarity is fairly decent. Trajectory lines do move. And you can see probably 360-degree type of sensors, or a higher trim level probably has more features there for the camera. And then you have your GOAT modes, which are pretty cool. Normal, slippery, eco. It's kind of fun that they changed the color of the Bronco in each one. When we do 0 to 60 later, we'll definitely be in sport mode. But then you have the cup holders. Pretty average center console with a plug-in down there. You have a sunglass holder up top. You have Bluetooth speakers. You have LED lighting, which is good, and incandescent lighting. So that's where Ford decided to save a few bucks. But overall, this is actually a really nice place to be. With that said, let me hop into the back and see how we fit back behind ourselves. I really think the side profile on the Bronco Sport looks fantastic. I love these matte black, non-painted handles. They just feel nice and durable. The door panel is not class leading in how far it opens, but it does open big enough for child safety seats, for pets, for kennels, for anything else you're going to do. The 60 split, though, is pretty heavy, probably from cheaper materials. Sometimes some of the compact crossovers, like the Subarus, they have very light, easy to maneuver while still being very bolstered and comfortable seats. so that was a little bit more difficult to move. And at 5'11", that's actually pretty high up that little seat right there. So I'm not gonna have to jump down too far or climb up from too high of a spot. And then you have almost like these ammo type of little spots that you can use carabiners and put stuff in, which is kind of cool. You also have vents back here, as you would expect on a compact crossover. A couple plugins down there, center armrest. I do wish that these were rotated 90 degrees so you could fit your arm and you could also fit the cup holders, but you're gonna have to choose one or the other. And sitting back here, the windows are big. The roof line of this vehicle is awesome because it is 5 feet 8 inches, or 2 or 3 inches higher than most other compact crossovers. So overall, this is actually a pretty comfortable place to be with good knee room, especially from my kind of move forward driver position. But also, if you have a bigger driver up front, if you have these seats further back, you are going to have a hard time even folding down these seats because this is only 14 feet long after all. Anyways, let's hop out and I'll show you the hatch. I think Ford knocked it out of the park with the back of the Bronco Sport, especially this black and white trim level. It just looks so good. And you'll notice there are some hinges up top and there's a little handle under the miniature wiper blade to open it up, but you are going to have to push the glass button right here. You'll hear a little bit of a snap, and then you can open it up. And at 5'11", I can mostly stick my head underneath the glass. I can actually reach down and almost touch the floor, just barely close by. You can see access to your stuff, maybe hide some keys in here with it unlocked but not lifted. There's a lot of things you can do, and that really gives me old FJ Cruiser vibes from when I used to own one. But also, because this cheap trim level does not have a power liftgate, you're just going to have to open it manually. And then back here, you have a pretty average 32 cubic feet behind the second row, and the seats are up. So this is a nice big storage area. You also have a little bit more width to get into the back compared to some of the other ones because of the more aggressive off-road bumper, but it's honestly not too bad. And then the loading floor is probably, about mid-thigh on me. So it is a little bit higher than a sedan, than some other vehicles probably, but it's not anything unexpected for this class of vehicle. And then at 5'11", I can just barely sneak by underneath the hatch. This hatch does not open nearly as high as some other ones, and you'll notice that it's almost just parallel to the ground. It's not up here like they usually are. So keep that in mind if you are a taller person. But back here, 32 cubic feet, when you drop the seats, you have a little bit over 60, around 64. So that is not class leading. That comes into the shorter size of this overall vehicle. And then underneath here, you unfortunately do not have a spare tire. You just have some basic tools and an eye bolt hole, some seam sealer, and a little bit of room to store some stuff, or you could always leave the loading floor a little bit lower on the lower hinge if you want. And then you have a speaker and a tiny little bit of storage right there on each side, which is pretty cool. But with that said, let's lower the hatch, come around to the passenger side. The passenger side looks very identical to the driver's side. I love all the black, non-painted accents. For 30 grand, this honestly feels like a pretty substantial vehicle. The door panel looks about the same, minus some of the switch controls. Bronco on the door sill. No power options for the passenger, but my backpack seems to be enjoying the nice cloth seats. And then I do wish this had some transmission tunnel storage beyond just the mesh pocket. That doesn't hold a whole lot of stuff. I wish it was a little bit bigger, and I wish you had some above the glove box storage. But the glove box, it's adequately sized. There's no plugins or anything, but overall, it's about what you expect, and nothing really stands out on this platform. So let's come around to the front. I'll snap my fingers, we'll pop the hood, and I'll show you the 1.5 liter turbo EcoBoost engine. Under the hood is a pretty well-mannered, pretty reasonable 1.5 liter turbo EcoBoost engine. It peaks out at 181 horsepower at 6,000 RPM and 190 pound-feet of torque at 3,000 RPM. So it doesn't spool up quite as fast as some of the other small competitors to this, but the main compact crossovers that have a similar 1.5 liter turbo 4-cylinder engine are the Chevy Equinox and the non-hybrid Honda CR-V. Most of the other competitors, like the RAV4, like the Mazda CX-5, like the Subaru Forester, those actually have a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated engine. So decide which one matters more to you if you do want a small turbo that might be kind of high-strung, might be pushing a lot of boost, or if you think a larger naturally aspirated engine is a better option for you. There's benefits to each option, but ultimately the reservoir is on the periphery. You have the battery right there. You have access to the headlight bulbs right there. Super easy to get to. You can see the coil packs on the top of this 4-cylinder, 0W20. You have the oil dipstick right there, the valve cover right there. You can see where it's split. Then the head and the cam phase timing, all that stuff right there. You have the alternator. You have the serpentine belt. There's the engine bracket holding this to the chassis of the vehicle because it is a transversely mounted front-wheel drive type of setup. Even for being all-wheel drive, these are not rear-wheel drive focused or longitudinally mounted like a full-size Bronco, But overall, there's a lot of room to work on under the hood, and you can see the 8-speed automatic transmission right there connected to the engine. So a lot of this is very mechanical looking. It's honestly pretty well done, and I don't really have any concerns as long as you don't mind having a family vehicle that only has a 1.5-liter engine. With that said, let's drop the hood and take this thing for a drive. Initial driving impressions of the Bronco Sport. It's got speed, partial throttle, 1.5-liter turbo. 180 horsepower, does about what you expect it to. When the vehicle's unloaded, not going up an incline, it does actually pretty decent. It's not going to get you there fast, but it's going to get you where you're going with reasonable fuel economy. It actually handles pretty good for a compact crossover. And then it's kind of cool to see the bulge on the hood, but that does take away from visibility forward facing because the hood doesn't slope down like all the other jelly bean shaped compact crossovers. This one being a little bit more bold and aggressive, it's going to be a trade-off in visibility. The windows are actually pretty big though on this, surprisingly. But because they are squared off or very flat at the bottom, you can't really see close to the vehicle. You are going to have to use those side mirrors, which are a little bit on the small side in my opinion. You can angle them to see most of what you need to, but they aren't as big as some other compact crossovers. And then because this vehicle is not super long, you can see right down the center, which is pretty cool. The steering wheel, especially after baking in the sun, it does feel kind of sticky on this base model Big Bend, you know? So maybe wash your hands after, that's kind of the feeling it's giving me. But honestly, overall, everything else about this driving experience is pretty decent. The speakers are not fantastic. They're what you expect for a base model vehicle, but the seats, these cloth seats, at least in my opinion, at 5'11", I think they're pretty comfortable. They're holding me in the backpack in pretty well. This vehicle also feels pretty direct. You can't feel anything through the steering wheel as far as steering input and vibrations, really, unless you're maybe going on a super bumpy road, which in that case, you're gonna feel vibrations everywhere. But it does feel very direct, and I like that about this a lot. Let's go around a corner with a little bit of speed, accelerating hard, loading the boost. Honestly, this is a pretty fun vehicle to drive. I love that you have the Bronco symbol and you don't just have a Ford on the steering wheel. And having the modern Ford layout, it's actually pretty cool. The dial to shift gears and the dial for your GOAT modes, those are pretty fun. I don't necessarily like this screen, at least the fact that all of your HVAC aircon controls are tied into it. I just don't like that in any vehicle. But overall, this is actually pretty fun to drive. Because I'm a car enthusiast, I would of course love the 2-liter turbo if I was personally considering one. And I think the MP trade-off might be worth it to you for the fun factor if that is something you care about. Otherwise, there's no reason to not just consider the 1.5-liter. This is a pretty cool vehicle. With that said, let me get to the private road. We'll do a 0 to 60 and then we'll wrap this up with my final thoughts. 0 to 60 in the Bronco Sport. Keep in mind, density altitude is almost 7,000 feet. So even though this is turboed, it's still down on power, probably about 10%. I am in sport mode, traction is off. We'll do a brake rev and we'll see what this thing can do. A little bit of wheel spin. And true 0 to 60 came in at 9.92 seconds, which isn't surprising for about 180 horsepower, especially at over a mile above sea level. My final thoughts of the Big Bend $30,000 Ford Bronco Sport is honestly, in my opinion, this might be the best looking compact crossover. It's really cool, it's squared off, it has all the things I care about. Adaptive cruise, lane keep assist, bright LED headlights. It's a 5-star crash test rated vehicle. Sure, it might not have the most ground clearance. The average Subaru has more ground clearance than this. It also doesn't get the best MPG, especially when you are comparing it to some of the hybrids or even the hybrid offered in the Maverick, which is the same chassis basically as this. So it is interesting to see what Ford went after with this. They went after a square, more boxy, aggressive looking, which is an awesome looking compact crossover. And honestly, guys, I am so glad that this thing exists. Most of us aren't going to abuse a $60,000 vehicle off-road. We might go on a few trails, get to the camping spot, the trailhead, things like that, the fishing hole, and this thing will get you there. You don't need to overspend. You don't need to spend 60 grand or two of the value of these to get that. This is a really cool vehicle. Sure, you can get a more loaded out, luxurious version of the Bronco Sport, but honestly, I'm pretty impressed with this vehicle for 30 grand. Do I wish it had a bigger naturally aspirated engine? Sure I do. Does it honestly compete pretty fairly against all the other ones, even the CR-V, which is a very big deal, a very class-leading vehicle? Yeah, it totally does. This EcoBoost looks easy to work on. There's a lot of room under the hood. Honestly, I don't really have any concerns with it. I think it's a pretty good product, and I'm not surprised why over 100,000 people buy these every single year. But ultimately, what matters are your thoughts and your opinions. Have you owned one of these? Are you considering it? Or why the heck are you watching this video? Don't get me wrong, I am so thrilled. I am absolutely pleased that you are here, but I want to know why you're here. What are you watching for? What have you gotten out of this video? I hope it was helpful, and if it was, please consider liking it. Comment your thoughts and opinions below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And remember, check out Goody Motor Ford. They have sold all over the country. They sell below MSRP. They are seriously a really cool group of people to work with, and that's why I love collaborating with them. Anyways, guys, I wish you the absolute best, and I hope you take care. And until next time, always test drive the competition. See you around. Bye.